Hello, I am Lee Unkrich. I'm the director of Toy Story 3.
And I am Darla K. Anderson, the producer.
And the K stands for?
K-A-Y.
I don't think I'm going to be able to remember that. Anyway, so we're here doing the commentary for Toy Story 3, which oddly enough, at this moment, we are not quite finished making, but we are furiously trying to finish the film. Where to start? It's always so hard to do these commentaries because we have 4 years of stories to pack into 90 minutes. So I guess we can jump right in. So we always knew that we wanted to start this movie big. I remember very early on, we wanted to have kind of a Western opening because we knew we'd started Toy Story 2 with kind of a Buzz space opening. So we thought it made sense to start Toy Story 3 with a Western opening. And in its original conception, this sequence was kind of a dusty, quiet, Sergio Leone-style spaghetti Western kind of an opening.
Yeah.
And
Woody was very brooding.
It was kind of fun, but we decided it didn't have the energy that we needed. You know, we figured people have been waiting 11 years for Toy Story 3, and we really wanted to start off having fun. And on top of that, we knew that we were going to be getting into some heavy stuff once we revealed that Andy was grown up and the toys were contending with what to do with their lives and what the future held for them. So since we were going to be getting into that heavy stuff, I just wanted this opening to be as fun as possible.
Hey, whose idea was it to have Jessie come riding down on horseback and save Woody?
I believe that was your idea, Darla.
Oh, thanks.
Girl power.
Yeah. I don't remember whose idea it was, but I latched onto it and loved it. How about that train in Western
How about
opening?
that train? You can't have a big, exciting Western adventure without having a train. And, of course, John Lasseter is a huge train fanatic.
Train fanatic. And like all things, John, well, once he loves something, he then researches it to the nth degree. So I bet there is nothing that John doesn't know about trains.
When we came up with the idea to have the train in this, we deferred to John to kind of help drive the design direction for the train because he had some very specific ideas about what kind of train it should be. It was inspired by classic old Western locomotives as well as Walt Disney's original locomotive, the Lily Bell. I will say that we learned what a Johnson bar is.
That's right.
We didn't know what a Johnson bar was before we made this movie.
Apparently,
trains don't actually have brakes on them. You have to actually disengage the clutch and then push this thing called the Johnson bar, which reverses the throttle on the train.
That's right.
Hopefully you train people out there are not going, what? That's not what it does. But that's my understanding of what it does. And then you have to re-engage the clutch so that the train is actually trying to go in reverse.
That's right.
And that's how you brake a train.
That is what it's doing, and it doesn't work quickly enough. And the only other thing to say about the train is it is number 95.
Which is the year that Toy Story came out. In an earlier version of the scene, we actually had Buzz Lightyear chained to the front of the locomotive, which was always a really fun image that we loved. And so we had, it was actually Jessie at the very beginning who was fighting Mr. Potato Head, and then we revealed Buzz chained to the front of the train. We ended up not having Buzz tied to the front of the train because we decided that it wasn't strong enough to see him have his introduction be kind of in a compromised position.
Right.
We wanted to give
After
him,
all these years.
we wanted to give him as heroic an entrance as anybody.
You can't touch me, Sheriff. I brought my attack dog.
Oh, the first version, remember? It had all the exact original dialogue.
Yeah, and we left a lot of that. I thought it would be fun to harken back to the original opening of Toy Story when Andy's playing with the toys, talking about his force field dog and the dinosaur who eats force field dogs. Originally, we tried to stick to just that dialogue and tried to use all of it. But we found that a little restrictive, so we ended up letting this take on its own life, but we tried to touch base with those lines here and there.
That's for the geeks out there.
We love this pig ship. I wish we could see it more, but we had to get on with our movie. I'd love to make a whole short film just about Evil Dr. Porkchop and his spaceship here.
It's Mr. Evil Dr. Porkchop to you.
Anyone who knows me knows that I love monkeys, and so, of course, we had to have Death by Monkeys here. And I believe when this bomb goes off, there are at least 1.4 million barrel of monkeys in that nuclear blast.
Yeah, there's some kind of monkey equation. There's some monkey math going on here.
I have to give credit to Brad Bird for that idea to actually have the mushroom cloud made out of monkeys. We originally just had a big blast go off, and then this kind of flood of monkeys came pouring across the plains, and it was Brad Bird's idea to actually have the mushroom cloud. So thank you, Brad.
You know, and the last thing, when you're looking at Western opening, it is just gorgeous. And I think it's a great way to open this film, just showing off the same world, but the new technology and gorgeous effects, and the characters look beautiful. It's just a great introduction.
We really worked hard to kind of meet each character again and give them a moment. Again, since we've been away from them for so long, it's almost like a reunion show, and having the different actors kind of have their little moments.
Mom, no, just keep playing. Just pretend I'm not here.
So this home video sequence here, it wasn't part of the film for a long time, but once we came up with it, we knew that it was right. We were a little freaked out at first because we weren't planning on building a model of young Andy, and we were already stretched so thin creating all the characters that are in this movie. It kind of freaked us out a bit, the idea of having to create another human especially.
And one that would work in our world.
Right. Well, we made a lot of technological and artistic advances in the 11 years since Toy Story 2. And one of the things that we were never really happy with in the early movies were the humans. We did the best job we could at the time, but there were just a lot of limitations in the technology. Now we can do humans pretty well. So the challenge on this movie was to make the humans look better, but not have them feel like they were from a completely different movie. I had this idea that if we shot everything on kind of cruddy VHS, that we wouldn't have to build the models and Andy up to the same level that we've had to do the other characters in the movie. We could kind of hide that by having the video be cruddy and get away with kind of a cheaper model. As it turns out, people here are really not capable of creating anything halfway. So Andy actually looks really great, I think. And even though we only see him kind of at VHS quality.
He looks fantastic.
I can't find my other eye.
All right, whose foot's in my face?
We talked a lot about, how far to advance these toys' characters in the intervening years since Toy Story 2. And, there was some talk about, where Buzz and Jesse's relationship should be at this point, and should they actually be together? And, I worried that if we left them kind of in stasis and right at the same place where they were at the end of 2 in terms of Buzz still being uncomfortable to talk to her, that might be kind of weird that it's been so long. But in the end, we decided that we wanted to just keep them in the same kind of comfortable place that people remembered them being in. So it might be a little strange that Buzz hasn't gotten the gumption together to be with Jesse in all these years, but thankfully he finally does by the end of the movie. A lot of people ask if we updated the models of the main characters in the movie, and we did, actually, but hopefully you won't notice it at all. We actually completely recreated Woody and Buzz and all the characters in the movie, and we did a lot of things under the hood to make the animation easier for the animators and more in line with the kinds of controls they've gotten used to over the years as our films have gotten more sophisticated. But it was very important to us that they not look different at all. So the interesting thing is if you take Woody, for instance, and if you put Toy Story 3 Woody right next to Toy Story 2 Woody, you can absolutely see that he's improved in a million tiny ways. I mean, he feels much more believably like a toy. There's a thickness to his shirt. You can really read the stitching and the stuffing in a way that never did before.
Buttons.
It's a million little things that, if we went along and pointed them out, you'd see kind of how everything improved. But if you look at Toy Story 3 in isolation, hopefully nobody will see that we've done anything at all. But all the work that everybody did will add up to a richer, more detailed experience.
That's right.
Everyone, a staff meeting?
Oh, not again.
Oh, come on, Slink. Gather everyone up.
So we're heading into a pretty long dialogue-driven scene here, which normally could be death in terms of pacing. But this is a vital scene. We had a lot of emotional things that we needed to establish in this scene. We needed to establish Woody as being this kind of unflagging supporter of Andy and having this unflagging belief that Andy still cares about them. And we needed to show how ridiculous all the other toys felt, that Woody still felt that way. It was really important to spend the time to make that emotionally resonate, because otherwise, at the end of the movie, when it turns out Andy still does care about them and actually takes the time to have one last playtime with them, Woody is then vindicated in a much more emotionally satisfying way.
There's the Army guys. They're always such a huge part of the Toy Story films. And of course, we got Lee Ermey back to play Sarge.
We added this moment because at this point in the scene, we wanted to raise the stakes a bunch and show that this was a very serious situation, that Andy was growing up, and we wanted to see some of the toys taking matters into their own hands and jumping ship, literally. And we thought we would do it with a character that people really liked, which is Sarge and the Green Army Men, just to show that bad things can kind of befall any of the characters in the room.
Here's Jessie coming back to her inner angst, and that is her deep fear of abandonment. Mm-hmm. It just immediately taps into her core.
Quiet! No one's getting thrown out, okay?
We knew that we had to make Woody almost crazily devoted to Andy.
Yeah.
Almost to the point of being annoying. I mean, we kind of wanted the audience to feel like Woody was out of touch and living in the past. Because again, when everything does work out at the very end and we reveal that, what was in Woody's heart was true and actual, it just makes it that much more satisfying.
This is one of the sequences that was hard to get right because it is dialogue driven and it does have so many of the underpinnings of the story. And we really, really, really worked it to make it fly just right. It didn't come out easily.
It didn't. We were always struggling with how long the scene was, and you were always trying to boil down to the essentials in the writing. But again, there were a lot of things that we needed to establish here, and hopefully we came up with something that works well.
And he'll play with us then, right?
We'll always be there for him.
Come on, guys. Let's get our parts together, get ready, and go out on a high note.
Andy's room is, again, another study in how to advance and tell the story with pictures of where Andy is. And every poster, every sticker, every Post-it has a little bit of meaning.
Yeah, we did a lot of research into teenage kids' bedrooms, and it was actually a very fun project that we did very early on in Toy Story 3. It was coming up with what Andy's room was going to look like now, all these years later. And we looked at a lot of teenage kids' bedrooms and the kind of posters they had up and the kinds of paraphernalia that they'd acquired. And it was important to me that we had the sense of kind of layers of things, like strata. It's like an archaeologist kind of working his way down through history. And Bob Pauly and his team did a great job coming up with all the posters and graphics and sports paraphernalia and everything in here. Because I think it still very much you feel the nostalgia of Andy's bedroom, but it's clearly not the bedroom of a 10-year-old anymore.
And look at this room. On these films, again, nothing comes for free. Every single piece of paper, every poster, every sticker has to be designed and cleared and made gorgeous and feel completely authentic, as if you could have bought it in any store.
Yeah, and you want to create this history. I mean, there's a map on the wall next to Andy's bed, and we put pins in it, kind of showing it could either be all the places where Andy's gotten to visit or the places that he wants to visit someday. We created flyers for different camps he'd been to over the years. There's just again, all these layers of history, and it's it's very difficult to create all that stuff. It takes a long time, but it's worth it in the end to have that feeling of believability.
Some of them could.
Very early on, we had to solve the problem of, well, why don't the toys just go to Molly? She's perfectly viable, Andy's younger sister. Can't the toys have a life with her? And we shot that down right away by adding this beat of showing that Molly's just kind of grown up a little too fast. She's already beyond her years and not interested in toys anymore. She's just into her iPod and teen magazines, and it's clear that the toys just don't have a future with her.
Yeah, it was really fun to take little baby Molly with her cute golden curls and try to figure out what she would look like as an 11-year-old going on 13.
Going on 50.
Fine. You have till Friday. Anything that's not packed for college or in the attic.
A few cool autobiographical things in there. We have a pendant for PU.
Pixar University. We put some Tigers stickers on Andy's toy box. My high school, I grew up in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and it was the Chagrin Falls Tigers.
West Cutting Boulevard.
We have a tradition at Pixar of always hiding a character from our next film in the previous film. And somewhere in this room, you will see something from Cars 2. I guess I'll just leave it at that and see if you can find it.
It might be a car.
Okay, garbage bags. We got to talk about the garbage bags.
Yeah, garbage bags. Oh, that was
when I
smokes.
gathered the team on this movie, I enticed them with the promise that we did not need to invent any new technologies.
He means we.
We enticed them with the promise that they wouldn't have to develop any new technologies. Who knew that garbage bags would prove to be the most difficult thing that we had ever done at the studio and would bring Pixar to its knees?
Yeah, and early on we had some looks development tests on the simulation of this thin plastic that, look at all that detail and wrinkling and everything. And the early tests looked fantastic. And we thought, okay, great, well, check, problem solved. But it took a long time to continue to advance it and make it look just so perfect.
Well, so luckily, Michael Fong and his amazing team in Shots of technical director brainiacs were up for the challenge.
And Shots is kind of like our special effects department.
I think they actually now boycott garbage bags and don't use them in their personal lives anymore because they have terrible post-traumatic stress disorder whenever they see a box of garbage bags. So Buster, we knew we had to bring Buster back in Toy Story 3. And of course,
how great is this shot? Come on.
We knew we had to bring Buster back. And of course, he had to be old and fat and gray and not his sprightly young self.
I think you can smell him too. That's what.
There's a special edition of Toy Story 3, of course. You're probably watching it right now that comes with the scratch and sniff card. So if you scratch number 4, you will smell geriatric Buster.
I just love that shot. We did such a good job with the animation and the effects. And again, Guido did a masterful job of bringing Buster back from deep in the dark halls of our digital backlot.
Everything about him just looks great. It's such a short moment that he's on screen, but it's very funny, and we knew we had to have it in the movie.
Well, do you know how we were able to pull up some of these old models especially? Is that our supervising technical director, Guido, kept his old SGI computer, and that enabled him to go back and get a lot of the old data quickly. Guido's so enthusiastic. He came here from Italy just to work on Toy Story 2. And he did. He got the job, and that's a great story in and of itself. And he kept a lot of his data handy in his office.
So lesson learned, don't get rid of your old computers.
There's no obsolescence.
I can hear the garbage truck.
We have somebody making a little cameo here coming up. We had this garbage man on the back of the truck, and we thought, well, why not make this Sid? So we gave him the same old T-shirt, and I don't know if
the guy's never changed his shirt.
I don't know if it makes sense because Andy moves away at the end of Toy Story, but who knows how far away he moved? I guess he didn't move very far. We actually called Eric Von Detten, who was a young boy when we made Toy Story, and asked him if he'd be interested in coming back and doing a little cameo in Toy Story 3.
He was so happy to come back in and be a part of it, and Eric, he's still a successful actor, doing really great. And he said that doing Toy Story really shaped a lot of his childhood in the best way.
So since we were just talking about Eric Von Detten, it would probably be a good idea to talk about John Morris.
Yeah, that's right.
John Morris was the boy who played Andy in Toy Story and Toy Story 2.
That's right.
And when we decided we wanted to have Andy grown up in Toy Story 3 and started thinking about who would play him, I got this idea in my head that we should reach out and find out where John was. He was 14 years old, I think, when we made Toy Story 2, and we had no idea where he was or what he sounded like. And we managed to track him down, and I'll never forget the day that Kevin Rear,
our casting guy
extraordinaire, called me into his office and played me the outgoing voicemail message on John Morris's answering machine at his home. And I knew instantly when I heard his voice that he was perfect, that even though he was kind of in his early 20s at this point, that he still sounded like he could pull off playing a 17-year-old. Because it was always vital for me that Andy be at this awkward place right between childhood and adulthood. So we made him tall, but we made him kind of gangly. And it was great that John Morris was able to bring this younger-sounding voice to him. Mm-hmm. You didn't want him to just be this jock stud.
He's on the cusp of adulthood.
Yeah, he's right on the cusp of adulthood. We purposefully made him 17 and almost 18 just because we wanted him to be in that place where he was struggling with that transition between childhood and adulthood. Just like many of the characters in this movie are struggling with kind of big life changes. We wanted Andy to be struggling with his own life change.
And I think getting John Morris to come back is one of those things that I think makes us happy as a team, that we pulled together the authenticity and there's a nostalgia for us. And
it meant a lot to John, too.
Did,
I mean, this was a big part of his childhood, and it really, I know, meant a lot to him to come back and play Andy again.
Yeah, we're always like, we got John Morris back, and everybody's like, that is so cool. People love it. How about Mom's license plate?
Mom's license plate?
A113.
A113. That's been Mom's license plate for the 3 Toy Story movies. A113 is a little Easter egg that shows up not only in all the Pixar films, but it shows up in a lot of animated films, period, because that was the name of a classroom at Cal Arts, which was a school that many great animation minds came from, like John Lasseter and Brad Bird, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, Tim Burton,
Joe Ranft,
Rod and John at Disney, just on and on and on.
Yeah.
A lot of people went through Cal Arts, and so A113 is kind of a little Easter egg that any Pixar fan knows kind of shows up repeatedly through
their classroom at Cal Arts.
We had a lot of challenge working in and around boxes in this movie. This scene, we had to have every single toy in the box having a conversation. And in reality, if you try to put all these toys in a box, they're completely jumbled together, as you see at the very end of the movie when Andy opens up one of the boxes. But here we had to kind of do a lot of camera trickery to make this box still feel tight and claustrophobic, but give us the room to place the camera and arrange the characters around inside.
You guys did a great job.
So heading into Sunnyside for the first time, I have to apologize to the people who ran the preschools that my own children went to in advance for making Sunnyside the sometimes out-of-control place that it is. I will remind them that this is a movie, and we don't condone teachers not actually keeping the children in line. There. Okay, I've made my apology.
There's your apology, a blanket apology. You might have to do that again a few times.
Now we're arriving at Sunnyside Daycare. And right away, as soon as we walk in the door, we meet Bonnie, a little girl, and her mom. And the reason we had Bonnie's mom work at the daycare was for a very specific reason, which is that at the end of the movie, when Andy shows up at Bonnie's house to give her the toys, we didn't want Andy to be a complete stranger showing up at the house. We wanted to kind of establish this pre-existing friendship between the families. So we solved that problem by creating this implied family friendship and this situation where Andy and Molly had gone to Sunnyside Daycare when they were little, and Mom kind of knows Bonnie's mom. And by doing that, we solved the problem of Andy being a complete stranger showing up at Bonnie's house at the end of the movie.
Here we are in the butterfly room. Take a look around this room. It's just beautifully set dressed, and the level of detail and all of the props and all of the artwork on the walls. And in computer animation, again, we get nothing for free. So we did a ton of research on a lot of daycares and made this just look as authentic as it could. And David Eisenman and his amazing team of set dressers and modelers just went crazy, pulling together every tiny detail to give this rich depth of experience to this room.
Well, here's something cool about this sequence in particular, where we're meeting the daycare toys for the first time. The animators were completely freaked out at the idea of animating the scene just because there were literally hundreds of characters, and we had this new character, Lotso, that had all this major acting to do, and there were just so many characters in each and every shot. They were overwhelmed at the idea of how to pull off this scene. So what they ended up doing, which was really smart, is we stopped all the animators from working on all the other scenes that they were working on in the movie. And we all came together, the entire animation crew, and we said, we are going to animate this entire sequence in just 2 weeks.
Right.
We're going to stop everything else, and we're going to focus. We're going to make it an event. And so we kicked the whole thing off. I was up on stage, and Mark Walsh, one of the animators, was playing the piano as an accompaniment as I kind of passed out the shots and talked about what I wanted. We made it a really fun event. It was like a marathon to get through this thing in 2 weeks.
We shut down all tours through animation. We closed it down and bared down and got through this.
It was like a gallstone. It was like a gallstone we had to pass to be able to go on and be in the right frame of mind to make the rest of the movie. And they did it. We pulled it off. We animated this entire sequence in 2 weeks. And if anyone ever finished a shot, they would then jump on board to somebody else's shot and help with the background characters. It was this huge team effort that really built camaraderie in the department and really kind of set the tone for the rest of the movie. And, everyone had a really fun time making this movie. That's one of the things I'm most proud of on this film, is that the crew really came together and just had a blast making this film, as hard as it was. So before we get too far into this scene, I have to give a shout out to Mr. Lotso Huggenbear, who has shown up here in the movie. Lotso is, of course, one of the most major new characters in Toy Story 3. And was one of the most fun characters to come up with, not only his personality, but creating his model and everything. We're going to talk more about him later, but we love Lotso. So here comes Ken. Ken. That was one of the things we came up with at our 2-day offsite, is that we wanted Ken to be in this movie. And I went back through my notes and found that we actually brought up the idea of having Michael Keaton play Ken. We kicked around a couple of other ideas, but we kept coming back to Michael Keaton. John had worked with Michael Keaton on Cars. Michael played Chick Hicks and had a blast working with him, and we all thought he would be great as Ken. So we contacted Michael, and he was totally up for it and came in and just knocked it out of the park.
Michael comes in. He's such a good improvisational actor. He has so much enthusiasm and brought a lot of his own ideas to the character. And that's so important for animation. All that big energy sure shows up on the screen.
The other thing that makes Ken funny in my mind is his design. There have been a lot of different Kens over the years, but there was this one Ken from the kind of the late 80s called Animal Lovin' Ken. We recreated this exact Animal Lovin' Ken outfit from the late 80s. And it's the whole package. It's the molded hair. It's the shirt open all the way down to the belly button. It's the ascot. Every little bit of it. It just made me laugh, and I suspected it would make everybody else laugh too.
And Barbie, too. Barbie's in her aerobics outfit.
That's actually a real aerobics outfit that Barbie is in. And I just thought it would be funny to have Barbie have to suffer the indignity of being stuck in the same out-of-date outfit for years and years and years. I mean, Barbie and Ken are all about the clothes, right? So Ken's able to indulge in all these different outfits, but poor Barbie, until the epilogue at least, gets stuck having to wear this same workout wear.
That's right.
So we're about to meet Big Baby here. We have a lot of new characters in Toy Story 3, but I have to say, personally, Big Baby is my absolute favorite. When you visit daycare centers, you see lots of these baby dolls laying around. They have no clothes on. They just have their kind of cloth bodies. And most of them have pen marks all over them. And we just thought that it would be fun to take that idea and then make it almost like Big Baby had prison tats.
And didn't one of your daughters do the drawings on?
Yes, my daughter Alice, we dug out a bunch of little doodles she made when she was almost a baby herself, and that's what's texture mapped all over Big Baby.
Which is very cool.
Another challenge on the movie was that the animators have gotten really, really good at Pixar. They used to be really good, but now they're just kind of off the charts good. And there were going to be a lot of people working on this movie who hadn't worked on the first two Toy Stories. So it was very important that not only the characters look the same as they did in the first two movies, but their animation, their acting, their movement needed to feel very much the same. So a lot of the animators had to kind of unlearn a lot of things that they've learned over the years here and kind of strip down to bare essential controls. And Bobby Podesta, one of my supervising animators, along with Mike Venturini, Bobby, very early on in the production, sat down with a lot of the people that were around in the days of the early Toy Story films and interviewed them to talk to them about how we came up with Woody's movement. You know, because for any new character that you invent, you have to think about, well, how they move. It's not something that just magically happens. We have to make decisions about how floppy Woody's going to be or how stiff Buzz is going to be. And we had to nail all that stuff in Toy Story 3 because if the characters didn't move quite right, it would almost feel like they were imposters.
And it's interesting because Woody's movement has evolved and there's been a couple of different takes on the floppiness of him and some amazing animators we've had over the years who did some signature shots. So it was analyzing a lot of that data and background. And Bobby got all those guys and got them all on camera. And there's a little bit of the Church of Toy Story around here and people analyzing how we wanted to get the best of the best from the last two movies and make sure it was infused into this film.
This scene we're heading into here is another kind of emotional linchpin of the movie. We knew we had to have this kind of messy breakup and have Woody leave the toys behind. Actually, in earlier versions of this story, Woody didn't leave the other toys behind. He showed up at Sunnyside with everyone and was part of the rough play, was kind of abused by the toddlers, and then later left Sunnyside. And ultimately, we realized that didn't work because I couldn't imagine any situation where Woody could, without being a complete jerk, leave his friends behind knowing the situation they were in.
Right. And Woody's character would never do that.
He just wouldn't do it. And we tried to come up with ways of making it believable, but we ended up with all these kind of rancorous, argumentative scenes where nobody was appealing and it was no fun to watch. So we ultimately realized that we needed to get Woody out of there as soon as possible. We had to have him leave and go back to Andy's and not even be aware of the bad situation that his friends were in. And once we knew we wanted to have the scene, I wanted it to be as emotional as possible and as real as possible. I mean, these are friends who have been together for years and years and years, and this parting is not easy. And we also wanted it to be kind of painful. We wanted people on both sides to say things in the heat of the moment that maybe they mean, but they're not saying in the nicest way. So we wanted this breakup to be kind of messy so that when they really do say goodbye to each other at the end of the movie in Andy's bedroom, that we have kind of a mirror of the same moment, but have it go well. This moment where Buzz holds his hand out to Woody and Woody refuses to shake it, we intentionally kind of mirror this at the end of the film when the toys have fallen into the incinerator and they're sliding slowly toward their doom. We have Buzz reach out to Woody yet again, offering his hand. Of course, that time Woody takes his hand and they bond together as a family. We also mirror the moment a bit at the very end of the film when they manage to get back to Andy's bedroom. We have Woody run over to say goodbye to Buzz, and this time Woody extends his hand to Buzz, and Buzz takes it. And we have this positive, healthy goodbye to contrast the messy, dysfunctional goodbye that we had at the end of this scene.
Yeah. With movies, that's all about setting it up and paying it off consistently to create this poetry and symmetry of storytelling. And hopefully you never are, because we want it to be completely invisible and satisfying in ways that you aren't conscious of, dear viewer.
There are just tons of really, really talented people, of course, who work on these movies, and it's very much a team effort. But every once in a while, a single vision, a single voice kind of shines out. And in the case of this sequence of Woody escaping from Sunnyside, I have to give much of the credit to our brilliant story guy, Adrian Molina. Adrian was tasked with storyboarding the sequence, and we actually hadn't written very much of it in screenplay form. We just knew that Woody had to somehow get out of this place in a believable way, but without kind of playing any kind of the prison motifs yet. We just wanted Woody to have a kind of a difficult time getting out, so it doesn't feel like toys can just leave whenever they want to. And Adrian ran with that and came up with all this stuff in the bathroom and the the stuff with Woody interacting with the toilet paper roll and almost falling in the toilet, and all this stuff with the kite. None of this was scripted. Adrian kind of came up with all of this by himself. And the version that he storyboarded is by and large what we ended up with in the movie. We changed it very little.
One of the great things about Adrian is he has such a charming drawing style. I don't know, there's something about it that makes me laugh for no particular reason. So sometimes when I'm watching his storyboarded sequences, I'm wondering how much of it has to do with that incredibly charming way he storyboards and draws the characters, and how much of it has to do with the story through line. And so when you see it finally realized in its full glory, you realize that all of that charm was inherent in the storytelling.
It was there, and it totally inspires the animation. Adrian's drawing style is very kind of, I wouldn't call it chicken scratchy, but it's very, the characters aren't on model. They're very stylized and kind of weird, very much in a way that Bob Peterson, his drawings are very similar, that they're just kind of, Bob would claim that he can't draw at all, but his drawings are still very, very funny, and Adrian's are very funny in the same way. And even though a lot of the characters don't necessarily look like Woody or some of the other characters, they completely inspire everybody to kind of push the animation style and follow through with these funny moments that Adrian envisioned.
That's just one of those sequences that has been enjoyable and delightful and hilarious and fun from the minute we saw it till now. I could watch it 1,000 more times and enjoy it as if it was the first time I saw it.
But I think that's the only scene in the movie that kind of had that path.
That's probably true.
I think that every movie only has one of those scenes. In Toy Story 2, it was the scene where Woody picks his way across the Cheeto landmine field. Jeff Pigeon came up with that, and that really didn't change much from when we first came up with it and boarded it till the final movie. And in the scene, it was Woody's kind of escape from Sunnyside.
And check out that bee on Bonnie's backpack. It's a character from our very first film, Andre and Wally B.
And if you look closely in other shots in the movie, there's also a Wally B kind of tattoo on Bonnie's hand.
Not a real tattoo, but a sweet little kid stamp tattoo.
We knew we wanted to have this sequence where, the toys would get abused by all these little toddlers who were just too young to play imaginatively yet. And the toys would kind of realize they'd been snookered and kind of weren't in the right classroom. And another one of the many challenges on this movie is that we had to create a bunch of little kids for both classrooms. Yeah. And that was a major project, both from a design standpoint and a technical standpoint, to pull off creating all these different little kids. Human characters.
Yeah. Little kids are so appealing and so fun and so cute in the animation and their clothes, and they're in lots of layers, and they've got hair, all different kinds of hair, and they had to have great variety. Not an easy feat.
We often shoot video reference, and for the scene, one of our TDs, Mak Kobayashi, filmed some really disgusting reference footage of what it looks like to drool all over a piece of plastic, so we could figure out what it would look like from Buzz's perspective to have a kid shove his helmet into her mouth. For a long time, I felt bad, like, well, okay, there's no preschool that's really like this, because the teachers would have the kids under control. But I was actually at a weekend event at my kid's preschool with parents, and there were no teachers there. And something like that actually happened. The kids were just running around like crazy, and they were driving over toys with their tricycles out in the playground. And it was clearly like the warden was away from the prison, and the kids were just going bananas. So it was nice to see that there was some reality to the kind of the craziness of the scene that we were creating for the movie.
And our kids are younger. They're little kids, too. That's the intention of that. They don't know how to play nice.
Right, the little kids who are in the caterpillar room. So, Bonnie, when we had that 2-day offsite, we came up with the idea of the toys ultimately being given away by Andy to a little girl at the end of the movie. So we had that idea, but we didn't have this notion of Woody actually visiting her in the middle of the movie. So that kind of sprang out of our own internal story development process with Jason Katz, my head of story, and Michael Arndt, the screenwriter.
And the whole story
Even though we came up with a lot of the bones of the idea in that 2-day offsite, the devil is in the details, and we had a lot of things to work out. But it was very important to me that we find a way to do this scene in a way that it just felt like a bump in the road on Woody's journey.
That's right.
I did not want to telegraph in any way that this was the place that Woody was going to end up at the end of the movie.
That's right. We wanted no tells in here. And I think we pulled that off really successfully. And we also, in the developing of Bonnie, the character, she had to be really, really a special little kid. We wanted to show how imaginative she was in her play and how fun she was too.
And, we just wanted this free, unbridled play. And I wanted it to feel different than Andy. Andy has great imaginative play times, but we wanted to make Bonnie's playtime distinct somehow, and we did that by having her actually insert herself into the play. It's not just about her puppeteering the toys, but she's actually kind of a character in her own playtimes, and that's how we made that unique and special. This sequence was one of the hardest nuts to crack. One of our top story artists who actually created a lot of Andy's playtime in Toy Story 2, Matt Lunn, we tasked him originally with coming up with Bonnie's playtime, and he did a brilliant job coming up with just acres and acres of ideas for what Bonnie's playtime could be. And we actually boarded lots and lots of different versions of the sequence, and it was overly complicated, and we had Woody during the playtime trying to figure out where he was and trying to see snippets of addresses and trying to figure it out, and it just was this behemoth and not entertaining. And ultimately, the deal breaker was that her play was kind of so wild and crazy and exuberant that we realized there was not enough contrast from the scene we called rough play, where the toys were abused by the toddlers.
Yeah, when we had our screenings, we have screenings every few months. And a lot of people, when we showed, they thought it was an extension of the rough play.
Yeah, they thought we were trying to show that Woody was in a bad situation, too.
Right.
Of course, that's the last thing we wanted anyone to take away from it.
But there was some fun things in there I did love.
We finally had one of our young story artists, Eric Benson, take a crack at kind of standing on the shoulders of the work Matt had done. And he came up with a lot of what kind of ended up in the movie.
My tail! Where's my tail?
We cut back to the Caterpillar room, and of course, it's like the end of a battle. I always describe this to my team as I wanted it to feel like the very end of the day, sunset after a Civil War battle, with the blood red sun going down, and all the soldiers kind of littering the battlefield, groaning and tending to themselves.
And yeah, right. And Scarlett O'Hara making a dress out of the curtains.
So we wanted the toys here to realize that they were in a bit of a pickle, but we didn't want to imply that Lotso was up to anything yet, or that there was any kind of prison scenario. So we stuck to just the basics of a classroom being locked and there being kid-proof locks on the windows, the Fenster Schneckler here that Ham talks about. When Buzz talks about the transom here, I have to say Michael Arndt, the screenwriter, begged me to put in a line for Rex saying, "What's a transom, Buzz?" Which I think was an homage to the movie Drugstore Cowboy. And I ended up not putting it in because I didn't think we needed it and I didn't think anyone would get it. But he begged me repeatedly to put it in. And every time this scene goes by, that's all I think of is Michael begging me to put that line in. So, Michael, it's not in the movie, but at least it's in the commentary. When Buzz tosses the string down to Jesse there, that was a shot that I didn't think anyone was going to be able to do. It just seemed like it was going to be really complicated. And one of my great TDs, Ferdy Sheepers, took it upon himself to figure out how to do it, and he did it in the most awesome way possible. He showed it to me one time, and I said, it's done. Good job.
Approved.
You think they had a fun playtime?
This little scene in the hallway here between Ken and Barbie, we wanted to have a little brief interlude between them, and there's another writer that we have worked with occasionally on a few of our films named Dave Reynolds, and I asked Dave to kind of write some punch-up material between Ken and Barbie, and Dave wrote that little interchange we all think is just super hilarious.
Shows the hyper intelligence of Ken.
The scene where they go up into the vending machine here, very early on, kind of in a much earlier version of the movie, we wanted to have a scene where Buzz would figure out what was going on in Sunnyside, and originally he snuck around and discovered this backroom meeting. And it was in that scene that we discovered that Lotso was up to no good and was actually a bad guy. And I wanted the scene to take place right in plain sight in a way. And I used to always describe it to everyone like, I said, it's like he climbs up in a vending machine and we're up in the workings up inside the vending machine. But I don't want to be that. I want to do something better than a vending machine. But we banged our heads against the wall for months and months and months, and we never came up with anything better. And everyone said to me, well, the vending machine's a pretty good idea. So we ended up going with that.
I kind of remember Andrew saying, what's wrong with the vending machine? Great.
And it let us do this really cool scene up in the top here with the sickly greenish yellow lighting, which is provided by that snacks panel on the front of the machine. So as you can see, Lotso's actually not in this scene because when we developed the story, we thought it would be more fun to delay his reveal as a bad guy for a little while. So we kind of did the staggered approach where we show that there's kind of this dark underbelly to the place and there are a bunch of rotten apple cores at Sunnyside. But we delay revealing Lotso just to kind of have a little more fun and with Lotso's ultimate reveal. This line from Ken when he says, take him to the library, That was a line that Michael Keaton improvised in one of our recording sessions. And the moment he said it, I burst out laughing. And I said, that is going to be in the movie.
Which, by the way, I did not agree with.
Actually, Andrew Stanton gave us a note at one of our screenings, at the first screening after I put that in. He said, "Oh, you guys have a mistake there. Ken's saying library instead of library."
And Lee said, that's intentional. And I said, Andrew, make him change it. But Lee got the last laugh because it gets a big laugh every time.
I just think it's funny. I think it's funny because I called them libraries when I was little.
This is one of the best ever big baby moments. It's a great shot. It's just
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Well, looky who we have here.
Let me go!
One of the interesting challenges for us with Bonnie's toys is that we had this whole new room full of toys, just like Andy had a room full of toys, and we had to kind of figure out what the dynamic of the group was going to be. Back on the first Toy Story, the whole conceit of the group of Andy's toys is that they were like all office mates. You've got just this kind of odd, eclectic group of characters working together in an office. And we didn't want to do the same thing in Bonnie's room. We didn't want to repeat that idea. So we kicked around some ideas, and what we came up with was the idea of Bonnie's toys as kind of an acting troupe, a bunch of actors hanging out together and doing their thing. And you've got the mix of like Mr. Pricklepants being the fussy British thespian, and then you've got Jeff Garland's Buttercup, and also Trixie, for that matter, Kristen Shaw playing Trixie, being kind of the improv actors in the group. And we just thought it'd be a fun dynamic for these toys, seeing their playtime with Bonnie as being a kind of performance.
Yeah, and it's more interesting that each kid would have their different way of playing. There's all different kinds of imaginative play. Not every single kind of imaginative play has to be the same. So it's great to see that contrast between the two children as well.
Should we talk about Lotso?
Yeah, let's talk
There's
about
so
Lotso.
much to talk about here.
No,
but
we could go on and on.
Lotso is actually a character that actually John and Andrew and Pete had come up with years ago before we came up with
On Toy Story.
the original Toy Story
The
idea.
original Toy Story.
A lot of ideas that we come up with that don't find a place in the current movie often show up in later movies. So Lotso was really that. We had this idea for a teddy bear who was kind of a mechanical bear. There used to be a bear toy that had a cassette in his chest and would tell stories and sing songs. And they had the idea that this bear was kind of broken and the tape didn't play right. It was kind of warbly. And so he was in the bargain basement bin. And he and his gang of toys that were in the bargain bins would kind of go out at night and raid neighborhoods. And it was this whole kind of crazy thing that, of course, never came to fruition. But we always held on to this idea of it being funny to have this kind of happy teddy bear be a part of something. And luckily, it was perfect for Toy Story 3 to have him.
And it was even the same name.
His name was always Lotso.
Yeah.
So in Toy Story 3, we designed this pink bear. We thought it would be funny to have him smell like strawberries. And, I wanted him to be this warm, grandfatherly character, and I wanted to really believe that he was a good guy. And he was a very tough character to cast, because, a lot of names that came up were kind of heavies, and I didn't want anybody to feel like he was a bad guy in any way when they first met him. But at the same time, a lot of the comic actors that we looked at, I didn't think could pull off being heavies when it was time for Lotso to be revealed that he's not such a nice guy.
Well, that's where Ned Beatty comes in, because he has the ability to span both the heaviness and the trustworthiness and friendliness, right?
Ned is a brilliant actor who had a run of brilliant films in the 70s. He was actually nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in Network. He was in Deliverance, and he was in the early Superman movies. He's in Nashville. He's just like he's in so many films. He's a legend. He's a great character actor. And
Tom Hanks calls him a treasure.
He is a treasure. And he's great because he can not only play comedy, but he also can do high drama. And that's Lotso. I mean, Lotso has a lot of amazing scenes in this movie, and he had to have the weight and power to pull that off. And Ned did it brilliantly, I think. Ned had actually never done voice work before for animation, but I'm very honored that Toy Story 3 has proven to be one of the favorite things that Ned has now done in his career. This idea of Mrs. Potato Head using her eye to see back to the house, it actually sprang from a much earlier idea. Some of the very early ideas in Toy Story 3, we thought about how toys could maybe communicate with other toys back at the house through walkie-talkies or something. And then we came up with this idea of Mrs. Potato Head's mouth getting pulled off and maybe ending up out in the sandbox with Mr. Potato Head, and they could communicate with each other that way. And those ideas were all fun, but they never really went anywhere. And then finally one day we came up with this idea of her actually leaving an eye back at Andy's house, and using that as the vehicle for the toys discovering that Andy didn't mean to throw them away, that Woody was right. And And that idea allowed us to kind of do this moment, which is a very pivotal moment in the movie where the toys realize that that Andy still wants them. And that fires them up to get back home as soon as possible. But of course, immediately after this, Lotso comes walking into the room, and they end up getting the rug pulled out from under them.
You didn't believe him first.
So this next sequence that we're heading into is, of course, the scene where everything starts to go south. And we start the transformation of Sunnyside Daycare into basically Sunnyside Prison. And we did that through a lot of different ways. One, in Bob Pauly and his team's amazing production design, we tried to put a lot of things in the room, like the bins of toys that could serve double duty as kind of a cell block. But then Dice Tsutsumi, my amazing art director, he did some beautiful color scripts that for this sequence started to drain the scene of color and go much more monochromatic, much more dire and gray. And then Kim White, my director of photography, lighting, and her team then ran with those color scripts and did an amazing job starting to make this the whole feeling of Sunnyside become just much more grim and hopeless.
A lot of these darks are hard to do in computer animation, and it looks fantastic in this scene.
Buzz switched into demo mode. We wanted him to be uniquely different. Not feel like regular Buzz Lightyear, but not feel like the kind of diluted Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story 2, and of course not like Spanish Buzz yet. We had to find this unique, specific thing, and we fished around for it for a while, and the thing that finally did it for me, I'm a big fan of Stanley Kubrick and his films, and Stanley Kubrick has this kind of recurring visual motif through his films that people call the Kubrick stare, and it's just an angle of the head tilted forward and the eyes peering out from under the brow line. And it's a very iconic thing that shows up in nearly all of Kubrick's films, and that's what I ended up pushing the animators towards with this kind of demo Buzz here, because it very quickly communicates a darkness inside, and that's what we wanted for this dark prison Buzz.
Very cool, and I love that even in his new diluted state, he's still attracted to Jessie.
Yeah, he can't help himself. She's irresistible to him.
Temptress.
So now we're back here with Barbie, walking into the room, and this was some of the earliest animation that we did on Ken. Angus MacLean, one of my great animators, he really spearheaded Ken's animation. The danger with Ken, because he's such a human-looking character, is that he just walk around like a human being, and we didn't want that. We wanted him to feel very much like a toy. And Angus really stripped his movement down to the bare essentials. I mean, his limbs really just kind of pivot at the shoulders and at the hips, and his head turns at the neck. And beyond that, he really doesn't articulate a whole bunch. I wanted to have full articulation in his face. I didn't want to limit that in any way, because I think it would have just looked like unfinished animation. But otherwise, all of Ken's physical movement is really, really restricted and very, very simple. And that totally begets lots of laughs, because he's just so funny when he moves around.
From the first time you meet Ken and he steps off the elevator, a huge laugh, not just from his appearance, but also from the great animation.
The other fun thing with the sequence is we were able to really sink down into the depths of Lotso's dark side. And some brilliant animation done in here by a number of animators. Sean Chaco did some great work in here. Several people. A lot of people got to animate Lotso in this movie because he's in so many scenes, and I think everybody had a great time animating him. He was a really fun character. And of course, the animators were totally inspired by Ned Beatty's awesome performance. The animators just ran with Lotso's voice and were inspired by a lot of the reference we had for larger men and their physical movement. And that all combined together to create Lotso's performance. This next scene is now, of course, back at Bonnie's house, and Woody's trying to figure out where he is and how to get back to Andy's. This is one of the standout moments for Trixie, the Triceratops, as played by Kristen Schaal. Kristen, I think, is just so fantastic in this role, and she's one of the funniest people I've ever met, and she's a great improviser.
Amazing original talent. Some of the things she does were spontaneous that showed up in the film, and you don't even know why you're laughing. It springs from her innate comic timing and sensibility.
And then we have Bonnie Hunt playing Dolly. Bonnie's another one of our lucky charms who's been in a lot of our films, and we love her to death.
One of our Pixar players.
We decided really early on to put Totoro in the film as a nod to the friendship between Pixar and Studio Ghibli, and the friendship between John Lasseter and Hayao Miyazaki. They love us, we love them, and we thought it would be fun to have a Totoro toy in the movie. So we reached out and asked Miyazaki-san if he would be willing to let us do that, and he was open to the idea. Jeff Garland plays Buttercup. There was just something funny to me about
so
having
funny, yeah.
his voice come out of this sparkly unicorn. We cast Tim Dalton to play Mr. Pricklepants.
Which is genius.
I had seen Timothy Dalton in Hot Fuzz and thought he was fantastic. We needed a fussy British thespian, and I thought Tim would be perfect.
Everyone loves Chuckles.
We love
He's
Chuckles.
Played by Bud Lucky.
He was one of our story guys and used to animate back on Toy Story, and he's just been around forever. He created our short film Boundin', and I brought him in to do temp voice for Chuckles, and we ended up loving it so much that we kept him in the movie. Chuckles is just so funny and so dry, this kind of bitter, worn-down old circus clown. He's just awesome. When we first decided to show Lotso's backstory, we had a whole sequence where Lotso got left at a rest stop by Daisy and then ended up accidentally getting thrown away and going on this journey in a garbage truck to the dump and almost went into the incinerator and then rescued himself at the last moment. And it wasn't really making a comment about Lotso's character. So we ended up instead coming up with this idea that Lotso would brave impossible odds to get back to Daisy's house only to discover that he had been replaced. And, Woody could have been in that same situation. He could have gotten lost and come back and found a new Woody. And, we like to think that Lotso and Woody are very alike in a lot of ways. But at this moment, Lotso makes a bad choice. And he lies to Big Baby and Chuckles and claims that Daisy replaced all of them. And he goes down the wrong path, and it's a dark path. And we had him do that specifically because at the end of the film, when Lotso decides not to help the guys and not push the button and stop the conveyor belt, there were a lot of people in early screenings who didn't like that. They thought that Lotso should redeem himself and should save them.
And he was too sympathetic. A lot of people really felt sorry for him.
Well, they felt sorry for him because, poor guy, he got replaced. But we addressed that note by having him tell more of a blatant lie at that moment and rip Big Baby's pendant off of him and act in a very selfish way.
Coming up, we see the Pizza Planet truck, which appears in every Pixar film since Toy Story, right?
Yes, we try to put the Pizza Planet truck in every movie, and I always knew that this was going to be the moment. That was going to be the truck that the Big Baby and Lotso and Chuckles were sitting on the bumper of. Randy Newman wrote a lot of beautiful music for this movie, as he has for all the movies he scored for us, but the sad ballad that he wrote for Lotso and Lotso's backstory is one of my favorite pieces of music he did for the film. It's just got this great kind of bittersweet, melancholy, dark, almost sounds like an old Eastern European circus to me.
Yeah,
in a way.
It's one of my favorite pieces of music he's ever written, and it completely evokes the mood we want to evoke right here.
My son Max, who's 5 years old right now, wrote Daisy's name on the little locket here. So it's a little kind of time capsule.
Your kids have a lot of contributions in the film in a great way.
They do. Max also wrote Bonnie's name on the back of her backpack, and my daughters Hannah and Alice drew all of the drawings that are up on the wall in Bonnie's bedroom that you see kind of throughout the film, and especially in the end credits. We wanted to have just a great, solemn harmonica theme playing at the beginning of the scene, just to evoke old prison movies and just the despair the toys were in. And in our orchestra that plays all the music for the movie, there's this guy named Tommy Morgan, who is he's the ultimate harmonica player in the industry. Basically, if you want harmonica music in your movie, you go to Tommy Morgan. And he's in his 80s, I think,
yes.
And he shows up with multiple suitcases filled with harmonicas. He has like a harmonica for every occasion. It's crazy. And we told him what we needed here. We needed kind of a solemn, lonely harmonica playing out into the empty prison block. And Tommy just nailed it. We did a few takes and boom.
One of my favorite moments in this film, just that harmonica playing, and then we find out that it's Ham playing it. It's just hilarious. And it also instantly tells us that it's a prison movie in the best way.
I have to give kudos to my effects department for doing this amazing sand. It just looks so real. And when they first showed it to me, I was completely blown away. Totally happy with how it looked, and they're wizards. That's all I can say. Now we're back the next day, and Bonnie and the other kids are flowing into the classroom here. This is a good opportunity to look at a lot of the details in the room again. As Darla mentioned earlier, we get nothing for free. Every lunchbox, notebook, piece of paper had to be designed here and shaded and colored and textured. And It's a phenomenal amount of work. Up in the rafters here as well, we're only in this area for, I think, 3 shots, but you can imagine it was just a ton of work to create all the wiring and the dust bunnies and everything up there. It's all about keeping this all kind of very believable. And it translates into just a huge amount of work from a lot of really talented people. Here you can see just the depth of detail that has gone into creating the realism of these 2 classrooms at Sunnyside.
That's for sure. And here's another great area of just fantastic animation. You just get lost in the moment because of how great the animation is and how great the character design on the children are.
Here we have Woody meeting the Lifer for the first time. We call this guy the Lifer. He's actually called a chatter telephone from Fisher-Price. It was a character I always wanted to have in the movie. We love mixing in new characters that we invent with kind of pre-existing toys that we remember from our childhoods. And when we decided to set this at a daycare and we knew we were going to have lots of preschool toys, somehow this toy rose to the top of my mental list of toys that I wanted to bring to life in the movie. And luckily, Fisher-Price was totally game to have us create a character for him. We always wanted to have a toy be kind of a grizzled old veteran, like someone who'd been in prison a long time. He originally was a character that Michael Arndt wrote that Woody met back at Bonnie's house. It was it was a Combat Carl. It was the same kind of toy like the one we made up for Sid to blow up in Toy Story.
I forgot about that.
We had this old legless Combat Carl who gave this speech to Woody about kind of how bad it was back at Sunnyside, and that's how we learned how bad the place was. That was kind of before we had the whole Lotso backstory flashback. So when we decided not to do that, we needed Woody to kind of learn the lay of the land. And so we created this chatter telephone and gave him this great kind of tough voice. He's voiced by Teddy Newton, who's one of our story guys and artists here at the studio, who also directed Day and Night, which is the short film that precedes Toy Story 3 in the theaters.
Your real problem's the monkey.
So the monkey, he actually was a very difficult character to model because we wanted him to feel very much like the real toy. And the biggest challenge is that his body is made out of cloth that's covered with fur. And at the studio, we had done fur before, like hair on Sully. And we had done cloth before. We were getting pretty good at cloth, but we had never tried growing fur on cloth and kind of doing the double simulation of that. I always loved this sequence. I always thought of it as like being drop-kicked into another movie. I wanted the audience to suddenly feel like they were in a completely different movie, just a high intrigue, high stakes kind of a thing. And Randy Newman just did some awesome music during this scene to just totally take us completely out of the Toy Story world and suddenly send us into this world of prison break and intrigue. And it's just a great example of how versatile Randy Newman is. I wish I could always give a shout out to every single brilliant animator that I've had on this movie, but this moment in particular, hopefully you can get a sense just watching this how completely complex this animation is of the toys gathering in around Woody and hoisting him up in the air. It was done by Brett Coder and Matt Strangio, and it just looks awesome. I love the lighting in the scene. Kim White and her team just did a beautiful job here with this awesome indirect light that bangs in through the curtains and bounces off the carpet up into the characters' faces. You compare Toy Story 3 to the first Toy Story, and it's just clear that both technologically and artistically, we've come such a long way in the last 16 years. I remember at the time when we were making Toy Story, it looked amazing. It was like nothing that anyone had ever seen before. But I think we had no idea where it was all heading and how, just the subtlety of the artistry that we were going to be able to employ.
And I think it's so cool that so many of the people that were on Toy Story or Toy Story 2 are on Toy Story 3, so they could evolve the technology themselves or right wrongs they perceived from before or just make it look even better, but still with all that same DNA and design language.
This is the sequence we call Prison Break. And it's a long sequence, but it needs to be. So it's a prison break. It used to be quite a bit longer than this because we always saw this as being kind of the central part of the movie. Right from the moment of its conception, we thought of Toy Story 3 as being like a prison film, and there was going to be this big prison break in it. And it's interesting that as the story developed, we realized, well, we don't really need to spend a whole lot of time with the prison break because we have a lot of other story to tell in the 90-odd minutes of the film. So we actually couldn't spend a lot of time with it, but I still want it to be as cool as possible.
Mission accomplished.
Well, it was very intricate. We had to figure out kind of everyone had to have a job and a task, and there were people fooling other people. And, we wanted to evoke as many prison motifs as possible.
And still make it really entertaining.
Still make it really, really entertaining and not have it go on forever. So it was a big challenge. And this is kind of a poster child for the kind of sequence that you want to just work over and over and over again in storyboards and shape it and fine-tune it and get it just right so that when you finally begin animating it, you know that everything is needed and needs to be in the film. Some great comic animation here from animator Dan Nguyen. Dan did a lot of the great, really emotional stuff later in the film, like Mom walking into Andy's empty room, and we ended up giving him a lot of serious stuff. He wanted to do some funny stuff, so we gave him this little interchange between Ken and Barbie. You get to see Ken here in yet another outfit in his robe and pajamas. These, I think, aren't literally, I don't think it's literally a real outfit, though the pajamas maybe. I think we kind of made the robe our own a bit.
And the robe has got that great terry cloth look.
Darn it, Barbie.
Parenthetically, I love the line, darn it, Barbie.
That's your favorite line in the movie, I think.
Kinda, it is, yeah.
This idea of Mr. Potato Head using his parts in a tortilla, that was an idea that we came up with near the very beginning of the film. I think Andrew Stanton actually came up with the tortilla specifically. When we had our original 2-day offsite, we had a 2-day offsite at the beginning of this film where John Lasseter and Pete Docter and Darla and me and Bob Peterson and Jeff Pigeon, a bunch of folks, we all got together and dreamed up the skeleton of this movie. And one of the ideas we kicked around then was that Mr. Potato Head could actually stick his parts in something other than his potato. But when Andrew Stanton went off and wrote the initial treatment that kicked off our story process, he came up with this idea that they would slip a tortilla under the door and Mr. Potato Head would put his parts in it. It turned out to be one of the biggest challenges on the movie. It was a really, really hard thing to animate, but pretty much all the tortilla head animation was done by just 3 animators, Aaron Hartline, Guillermo Jacinto, and Jean-Claude Tran. And animating Mr. Tortilla Head, I think, put gray hairs on all 3 of their heads, but they just knocked it out of the park, and it's super, super funny. And here we are in Ken's closet, and this is a scene...
Which is a place I know I've always wanted to be.
We just knew we had to go. Well, one, we had to go into the house. I wish we saw more of the house in the movie, but this will have to do. Ken's closet and all his outfits. So we knew very early on that we wanted Ken to have a different outfit in every single scene in the film. We just thought that was going to be funny. Like he somehow picked out the perfect outfit for every occasion. And so that kind of begat this sequence in the closet. And I think this is Michael Arndt, the screenwriter, came up with a lot of this idea of setting a lot of this in the closet. And it's very, very funny. So we wanted to do this kind of fashion show here and pack Ken into as many outfits as possible, as many ridiculous outfits. We actually did a lot of research into Ken outfits, and most of the outfits that you see in his closet and that he wears are actual outfits.
Which is
that were
unbelievably wonderful.
I actually did 2 voices in Toy Story 3. One was the Jack in the Box that yells, "New toys!" And the other's the monkey here, when he's tied up with the tape and he's struggling, going, it's actually me.
Was it method acting?
No, I always secretly wanted to be a monkey, and my dream came true. Speaking of voices, total non sequitur here, but one thing we haven't talked about is the fact that we were so excited to have all of our original cast come back. You know, Tom Hanks, Tim Allen.
Joan Cusack as Jessie, and Jodie Benson came back as Barbie. Our good luck charm, John Ratzenberger, Estelle Harris, Wally Shawn.
Don Rickles, the whole gang came back, and we're thrilled to be a part of the movie again. In fact, they've been asking for years about when we were going to make a Toy Story 3 because they love these characters as much as we do. And when we were finally able to make the phone calls and tell everyone in the cast that Toy Story 3 was happening, they were all just thrilled right from the very beginning to be a part of this again.
Definitely. There's a lot of positive energy in the air.
This moment of Mr. Tortilla Head forming into Mr. Tortilla Head for the very first time, I wanted it to feel kind of like Frankenstein's monster coming to life for the first time. So we shot all these little creepy inserts of the pegs popping through the tortilla and kept it all kind of mysterious and creepy. And the music's really creepy here. Until we finally reveal Mr. Tortilla Head in all his glory.
And it's a great build. People kind of, at first, when you first showed the reels, they weren't sure exactly what was happening, and then grew in delight as they saw the pieces coming towards the tortilla, and then finally culminating in the tortilla head. It's always been just this wonderful piece of building anticipation. You know what else I really like in Ken's closet are the stickers for the bookshelves and the lava lamp sticker, and which is true to a Barbie's house.
It's just keeping it real. When we had longer scenes, we used to have Ken offer Barbie something to eat from his sticker refrigerator and warm his hands in front of the sticker. It's just you could make a whole short just about Ken. Just to give you a little glimpse into kind of the craziness of how detail-oriented we are, this rubber band string that Slinky pulls back to shoot the key across the hall, I can't even tell you how many meetings we had about that rubber band string and how to do it and what it should look like and how to hook the rubber bands together. And again, it's on screen for seconds. You just barely see it. But with their meetings, there are photographs of me kind of talking to the TDs about how to make the rubber band string. It's just on and on and on. It was just this huge project for just moments on screen. It's just like, John Lasseter always says at Pixar, we like to sand the underside of the drawers. We pay attention to the tiny details that maybe nobody will ever notice, but we know they're there.
Which I think actually ends up being important. I think that wends its way into the entertainment of the films.
Let's see.
That hat behind Barbie as she's ripping the clothes is a nod to Michael Arndt, the screenwriter. He wears these little military caps all the time. It's all he ever wears. And so we stuck that little cap there behind Barbie as a nod to Michael. The Nehru jacket.
A Nehru jacket. It's highly valuable to Ken. It's from the Groovy Formal collection.
We did a lot of research into kind of what the most valuable outfit would be. And somehow Barbie would know that. She would know the most valuable thing to tear in half, or to threaten to tear, to get Ken to finally spill the beans about what they did to Buzz. But when we found out what the outfit actually was, it was really mundane. It was just like totally not an interesting thing. So we ended up just inventing the rare Nehru jacket. That was something we totally made up. Ken may have had a Nehru jacket at some point, but this one we totally made up and made it from the Groovy Formal collection of like 1967. This sequence here where Mr. Potato Head meets the pigeon, this was something that Adrian Molina, hyper-talented story artist, came up with. Again, we wanted to have a beat where Mr. Tortilla Head ran into a complication, and Adrian boarded a whole bunch of different ideas, and one of them was him kind of turning and randomly bumping into a pigeon. And I just thought it was incredibly funny and full of potential to just have this dumb pigeon, a pigeon that's just as dumb as the seagulls in Finding Nemo. Not make him a character, just make him a real pigeon. And Adrian did all the great stuff of Mr. Tortilla Head working his way along the ledge and kind of accordioning in and out. And we used that as a model for the great animation that Aaron Hartline did on this little bit.
Here's just some great comic relief between the three of these characters. It breaks up the tension of what's going on right now, and it just cracks me up.
What? He said no one can just...
Now we're heading towards Buzz getting switched into Spanish mode. This was an idea that we came up with at an offsite kind of early on the film. We knew that Buzz was going to get switched into demo mode, and I think we were having a conversation about how to get him switched back because we wanted it to be entertaining. We didn't want it to just be this mundane thing. And I believe Andrew just casually tossed out the idea of, what if Buzz accidentally got switched into Spanish mode? And as is often the case when a good idea hit the floor in one of these meetings, everybody jumped all over it. We thought, well, okay, not only does he speak Spanish, but he needs to act totally differently. He needs to become like this Latin lover and completely change his personality. I originally thought it would be great to have Tim Allen do the Spanish for Spanish Buzz.
And he wanted to.
And he really, really wanted to, but as we quickly learned, Tim speaks English. And that's all he speaks. And even though he gave it a good, solid effort, everybody knew, including Tim, that this was going to be funniest if Buzz was just suddenly speaking extremely fluent Spanish.
And not just Spanish, but Castilian Spanish.
Well, we did a lot of exploration of how Spanish Buzz was going to move. I did some work with Carlos Baena, one of my animators who's from Spain. And we watched a lot of flamenco dancing and Latin ballroom dancing and bullfighters. And all of that is very Spain, very kind of actually Andalusian Spain, kind of southern Spain. And so we finally committed to having the Spanish that Spanish Buzz speaks be kind of a Castilian Spanish from Spain rather than being, say, a Mexican Spanish.
So that it would match the physicality just right.
And we finally found this great actor named Javier Fernandez Peña, who... interestingly enough, had done the Spanish voice for Buzz Lightyear toys in Spain, totally randomly. I mean, we didn't even know
we
that
didn't
when
realize
we picked his voice. We just wanted someone who was going to kind of have a deep, sexy Spanish voice, and so he got the job, which he loved being a part of this film.
You would not believe what I've been through tonight.
We had a lot of really early ideas about different things that Mr. Potato Head could put his parts into. I remember there were drawings that Jeff Pigeon did of like an apple, like with a bite taken out of it and a worm coming out. just all kinds of rotting fruit and vegetables. At one point, we conceived of this whole journey where he would have to just keep finding a new host, almost like a soul jumping from person to person, making his way across the playground. We used to have a really long, complicated sequence of the toys making their way across the playground over to the entrance to the dumpster. And there was a lot of really fun, inventive stuff that we did of them creeping around on the playground equipment. But it was just one of those things where we just needed to keep everything moving. We needed to keep the movie.
They used almost everything in the playground in a really fun way. But yes.
But it just had to go because it was just slowing everything down. And it's always a shame to cut stuff that's clever and inventive, but you have to do what's right for the greater good of the movie.
Okay, this is one of my favorite moments in the film.
Well, I love Big Baby, and this is a pretty creepy moment here. And we shot it intentionally creepy. You know, we want it to be the scary moment. But the thing I love about Big Baby more than anything is that he's just completely an innocent. You know, I don't think of him as a scary character. I think of him as a completely innocent character who I, as the director, chose to film in a scary way. And
he doesn't realize he's just a loyal baby and part of the team, and he's not an evil character by any stretch.
This beat back in the bushes where Spanish Buzz does his kind of courting dance around Jesse, that came because early on when we were trying to find the physicality for Spanish Buzz, I had Carlos Baena just do a bit of test animation.
Just to explore the
physicality, and we just happened to have Jesse in it, and we had Buzz kind of, trying to enchant her in his Spanish way. And it was really, really funny. It was a big hit. Everybody loved it, and it laid the groundwork for all the Spanish Buzz animation to come. But we realized at a certain point that animation was really funny, but none of it was in the movie. Like, there was no beat like that in the movie. And it was John Lasseter who, in one of our meetings one day, said, you guys should really try to find a place to use that somehow, because it's just too good not to have in the movie.
And as is often the case, John was right.
John was totally right. The key was finding the place to put it, because I didn't want it to feel shoehorned in. And then I finally decided that if we were going to do it anywhere, it was going to be in this beat between getting across the playground and getting over to the opening to the dumpster. And I'm so glad it's in the movie, because it just gets huge laughs all the time, just like our animation test did. Although, to his credit, Carlos took what he did, which was already great in the animation test, and he made it like 50 times better. The beginning of the scene here where they get down to the dumpster, just to show you a little kind of simple movie trickery. We filmed this in a very specific way to show the dumpster so that we're not showing all the other escape routes that the toys have, because in reality, they could have just kind of climbed down or gone any number of ways. But by limiting what I show to the audience as a director, you don't think about those alternate escape routes. It just seems like they have one choice, which is to get over this open dumpster and get to the other side of it. When we originally wrote this sequence, we had all of the daycare toys from Sunnyside surrounding the dumpster. It was like Lotso had kind of gathered everybody, all the prisoners, to kind of witness this and use it as a teaching tool, like a lesson, like, don't try to break out of here. This is what's going to happen to you. And we ended up paring it down, one, because it was just going to be really complicated from an animation standpoint to have all the toys out there. But we also just wanted to keep it very simple, too. And so it's very clear about who's good and who's bad in this place. And ultimately, it's really just Lotso that's bad. I mean, he's got these guys around him, these thugs like, Stretch and Chunk. But I think that they're just opportunists. They just have aligned themselves with this guy because it put them in kind of a little position of some power. But we do show that they get redeemed in the end credits of the movie, and that they kind of play fairly along with everybody else.
Why don't you come on back? Join our family again.
This isn't a family, it's a prison.
This line that Barbie spouts, this line where she is suddenly hyper intelligent, that was a line that Michael Arndt wrote, and I don't think we changed it one bit from how we originally wrote it. It was just so fun to have Barbie, who is of course seen as the stereotypical vapid, airheaded woman. She's got a lot more going on in her noggin than people might expect, and this was the moment to kind of show that Barbie not only is tough and physical, which we saw during the prison escape, but she's also got a big brain in her head.
She's smart. The lighting on this scene has that yellow, garish look.
When Dice created his color script, you always have to think for every given scene, what are the colors that you're using in the scene? How is it lit, and how is that enhancing the storytelling? And in this case, we wanted to really accentuate kind of the sickly underbelly, the illness at Sunnyside. And Lotso is at the core of that. So we chose to light this whole scene using this kind of sickly yellow sodium vapor lamp that's out in the alley behind Sunnyside.
In case you guys don't know what a color script is, they are these little paintings that give us a map of the emotional beats of the film.
And kind of how color can be used throughout the film to support those emotional beats. Then we give Big Baby this one last moment here.
Comeuppance
moment. Big Baby only has one line in this whole movie. His vocalizations are all made up from lots of different real babies. But he has one line, which is where he says, and that for that one line, we auditioned a whole bunch of babies. We had all these babies come in and say mama, and they played all the mamas for me. I didn't know who any of the babies were or what their names were, but I ended up picking this one performance because it sounded the most kind of heartbroken and pathetic to me. And it was only after I picked it, and I said, well, what's the name of the baby? And they said, this baby's name is Woody.
And
it's pretty freaky deaky.
Very odd coincidence. Coincidence? I think not. This is Big Baby's moment. Lotso is so unkind here, and it's so hard for us to see Big Baby getting hurt in any way.
I love how we go from being scared of Big Baby like 5 minutes earlier when his head spins around on the swing set to now we're completely empathizing with him in such a relatively short amount of time. This shot here where Lotso grabs Woody's leg and he falls over and then he gets yanked in, I was totally inspired by Sam Raimi's great film Evil Dead. There's a shot where somebody gets pulled into a cellar door, and I've just always remembered it, and I couldn't imagine filming this any other way, just having the camera kind of flying over as Woody gets yanked down into the cellar door, ostensibly.
I did not know that.
I don't think I ever told anybody.
Learned that as well.
This trash here falling in, this is the beginning of kind of dealing with lots of trash in the movie. It was one of the hardest things we did on Toy Story 3. The amazing shots team, led by Michael Fong and David Ryu and
Jenny Choi managed it.
They had a Herculean task on their hands to create all this garbage and have it look and behave in a realistic way. And so the animators didn't have to animate it at all. This is all just kind of, I won't say automated, but it's not animated by
hand.
You're leaking.
Oh, no, I was going to say simulated. Simulated.
It was a huge task to create all this trash for this sequence and for the end of the movie. It was actually a year and a half of research and development and inventions of a lot of new techniques that allowed us to do all this at the end of the film, and it just looks fantastic. When we first storyboarded this sequence, I think it was storyboarded by James Robertson, we had a whole thing where there was actually like a compactor in the truck that would kind of crush everything. And the toys sought refuge inside a dollhouse. There was like an old broken dollhouse from Sunnyside that ended up in there. And the toys all climbed inside the dollhouse. And then it was almost like an earthquake happening or something. But they were seeking shelter together as a family inside the house as the walls kind of caved in and crushed and everything got closer and closer and closer. And then finally, at the last moment, right when they were about to be totally crushed, we had it stop. And then they showed up at the dump. And that's just a good example of how, as you're storyboarding and writing these movies, you try to infuse as much entertainment and drama into every moment. But when you start to string the scenes together and look at it as a whole, oftentimes you start to see repetition, or you see that, we're making this really dramatic here, but we're also doing really dramatic stuff at the dump. And how many dramatic moments do we really need? So even though the individual moment is really entertaining and fun, it just wasn't necessary. So we simplified it quite a bit. And we ended up focusing mostly on Spanish Buzz. The idea of the toys showing up at the dump kept rattling around in my head. It just seemed like a great setting. And it felt like the true end game for a toy. A toy getting thrown away, that's not the end of its life. I mean, a toy being outgrown by a kid, that's not the end of its life. But ending up at a landfill and then ultimately heading towards the belching inferno of an incinerator, that's the end. That is the end. There's nothing beyond that. And that really resonated with me and stuck with me, and I couldn't let go of it. And I thought, if we're going to end this trilogy in a big way and really push the toys to the brink, I thought that we should take them to the dump. The biggest fear that the toys have, it's a fear that we show at the beginning of the movie when they almost get thrown away in the truck. That simple decision ended up translating into a mountain of work for a lot of people. But what it begat, which I'm most proud of in this film, is the scene in the incinerator. The sequence here where the toys are trying to save themselves by grabbing metal items to pull themselves up to the magnetic conveyor belt above, that came from one of our research trips to a recycling center where we saw they had basically this on a smaller scale, and a magnetic belt was pulling all the metal up to the ceiling and to a different belt. And so we thought that would be a great way for the toys to escape the shredder. We knew we wanted Buzz to grab a lunchbox and have that lunchbox pull him up to the belt. And I ended up having it be my favorite lunchbox from my childhood, which was my $6 Million Man lunchbox. That's what Buzz has there. Try not to make it too obvious, but that's what that is.
You know, we've talked about this before, but it's really hard technically to accomplish all this simulation and having the toys wade through all these massive amounts of trash. We did some research. Several of our teams went to the dump to figure it out, and we also brought a lot of trash inside and waded through it. But it actually really helped us understand the physicality of the trash and what it takes to wade through it.
Guys?
We created this little kind of coolly lit kind of blue area after the shredder to give kind of a little respite from the chaos that we just went through with the shredder, and also set up maximum contrast heading into the incinerator. So that this red here, this orange-red glow, would have as much impact as possible when we finally revealed it. This last scene in the incinerator here, you know, if we've done our job well as storytellers, I think that, I think people are fully expecting that Lasso's going to push this button. At least I hope that's what we want people to believe. We want people to believe that, against all odds, Lotso manages to get up to that button, and he's going to save these guys as thanks for saving him. He's doing the right thing.
I think it works because we want him to. Yeah,
we really wanted to. We're rooting for it. And, of course, when he gets up to the top, he doesn't push the button. And I hope that the audience feels at that moment, oh, my God, what can possibly happen now? How are they possibly going to get out of this situation? Yet a second later, they go tumbling back into the incinerator. I mean, we wanted this to just seem completely impossible. We designed this whole area here at the end, the vortex of trash, to be inescapable. The toys turn around and they try to scramble out. They try to climb up the trash, but it's very quickly clear that that's not an option for them. I mean, I wanted there to be no option.
Right, because our characters wouldn't give up. Our characters wouldn't give up if there were options.
No, but if you remove all those options and there's no choice, what happens in that moment? And we saw this as just being this wonderful, I mean, it's really heavy, but it's this wonderful moment of these toys kind of really coming together as a family and knowing that against all odds, that's what's most important. They have each other, and they're gonna face their end with a quiet dignity. I always thought of this as almost like a plane going down, and what do? You don't want the characters just running around screaming. I think what would actually happen is, if you're with your loved ones, you take their hands and, kind of face the end together, and so that's what we do here. Buzz offers Woody his hand, and Woody, of course, doesn't refuse it as he did early in the film. He takes it, and they all hold hands and close their eyes, and they're facing this impending doom.
It's amazing how emotional this moment is. And it was, again, in storyboards as well.
Well, it's emotional because you care about these characters. After 3 movies now, you really care about them, and you don't want anything bad to happen to them. So this idea of them getting rescued by the claw, we came up with that pretty early on, and it was, again, one of those ideas that we knew instantly that it was the right idea, because, of course, it fed back into the first film with the claw where the aliens came from. It allowed the aliens to kind of repay their debt to Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story 2, where he saved their lives. So I think in their minds, all they're doing is repaying their debt to Mr. Potato Head. They're not doing anything particularly heroic in saving everybody. They're just paying Mr. Potato Head back. And these claws actually exist. They have these huge claws at dumps. We saw one, and it looks exactly like that.
True that. They're really that huge. Deus ex machina.
Well, this is literally, Deus ex machina is this Greek idea of like the hand of God coming down. And literally in Greek plays, there would be a mechanical thing that would come down out of the ceiling and would often kind of rescue characters. And it's seen as, it kind of connotes bad storytelling, that if you have characters in an impossible situation and then you have some kind of simple thing show up that saves the day that you didn't set up in any way, people call that Deus ex machina. And it's, again, this negative thing. But we thought, well, let's have it literally be, I mean, it is Deus Ex Machina. It's like a hand of God coming down from the heavens to save them. And we just fully embraced the idea. We established the claw a few times earlier in the film as jokes of the aliens seeing the claw. And we did that specifically to kind of keep that idea of the claw present in people's minds.
And foreshadowing.
So that it won't be coming out of nowhere at the end. This idea of Lotso ending up tied to the front of a garbage truck, everyone around the world might not be familiar with this, but in a lot of big urban areas, you'll often see garbage trucks with stuffed animals tied to the front. And you see them all over New York City. And they do that because, the garbage men will be emptying the garbage and they'll find a poor stuffed animal that's been thrown away. And rather than just throwing it away, they'll, give it a little dignity and tie it to the front of their truck. It's not to be mean to it. It's to save it from the garbage and have a little mascot on the front of their truck. So we thought that would be a fitting end to Lotso, to have him end up tied to the front of this truck. And we added a bunch of other characters there who've been there for some time and are deteriorating and covered with bugs, so we could get a sense of probably what's going to happen to Lotso after a few months.
Yeah, it was a good way to give him his comeuppance without being too overly mean.
I guess they pick up the garbage a lot in Andy's neighborhood.
That's why it's so clean.
Like Singapore. They're very fastidious there. We did that little banana peel on Rex's head for no reason other than it was funny. Just a good example of a fair amount of effort that went into work for one little moment in one shot. Same thing with the water here. The water was really challenging to do the spray and the water squirting out of Mr. Potato Head's nose hole, but it's funny. We need to quickly set up that the toys got cleaned up because, of course, they've just been at the disgusting, filthy, stinky dump, and I didn't want Andy to open the box of toys and be happy to see them, followed by turning away revulsed. We always knew that the toys were going to finally get back to Andy's room at the end of the movie, and I also knew that I wanted this scene to feel like a real goodbye. Because nobody knows what's coming with the toys being given away to Bonnie at the end of the film. I wanted to create the scene as if you were to just chop off the end of the movie and it didn't exist, that this scene would work as a satisfying, real goodbye. So I really wanted to fake the audience out into thinking that this was the end of the film, that we were through all the conflict and now the toys were going to go in the attic and Woody was going to go off to college and somehow the movie was going to end. So these are all very heartfelt goodbyes, very satisfying goodbyes with a little joke here at the end with Spanish Buzz. And then the toys scramble and get into their boxes. This moment between Andy and his mom was not something that we originally had. I think at one point we just had Andy come walking back into the room and he, I can't even remember what we did. Somehow we ended up going to Bonnie's, but we didn't originally have the moment between Mom and Andy. And when we hit upon that, the idea of Mom walking into this empty room and kind of it hitting her really for the first time that her little boy, her baby, was going to be leaving and going off to college, we just knew immediately that it was just full of emotional potential.
I can't remember what we had before this because this has always been such a strong, powerful scene. It's the thing that's stuck with me. And for many of us on the film, it's been emotional since the first time we saw it. All the way up until now, it still has the same impact.
We just love the idea of Woody hearing Andy say something that kind of solves all his problems. Woody's been so fixated through the film that he has to be with Andy. He has to be with Andy. And to hear that there's a way for him to be with Andy without physically being literally with Andy, it's catharsis for Woody in this moment. And he knows that he has an opportunity here, a fleeting moment, to correct everything and change the course of all their lives. And that is, of course, to write this note for Andy to see so that he will hopefully make the right decision and donate the toys to Bonnie.
Which is the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. But again, hopefully the audience is thinking at this moment that he's just done this for the toys, that he's kind of altered the lives of the toys so that rather than going to the attic, they're going to be donated somewhere. I honestly don't know what people think at this moment, if they think that he's arranging for them to go back to Sunnyside or what. But if we've done our job well, they don't know that Woody's actually in that box with them at that moment. Andy pulls up in front of the house here, and we reveal finally that it's Bonnie's house, that this is what Woody has done. But we added this one little shot here, kind of pushing in on the box and the open handle, hopefully to get people to think that this is Woody inside the box watching all this happening. It's just one last fake out to kind of seal the deal and hopefully give as much of a surprise to the audience as possible when we finally reveal that Woody is actually down at the bottom of the box. We always knew we wanted to end the movie with Andy giving the toys away to a little girl, specifically. It was an idea that we came up with on our original 2-day offsite. We knew it had the potential to be really emotional. We wanted Andy to kind of take the time to talk about how special each of the toys was to him. But it was a tricky scene to write. We did a lot of passes at this scene. We worked on it quite a bit, and it was actually the very last scene we animated.
Just so that we would make sure that we got it right.
We wanted to get it right. I knew it had the potential to be emotional, but I also knew it had the potential to get sappy and be maudlin. And if we went there, then the movie would be ruined, I think.
Agreed.
So it was a very delicate balance to have the emotion feel very real, but to not get melodramatic in any way. And hopefully we've done that. We found a way for Andy to kind of talk about each of the toys here briefly. We try to linger on their faces as much as possible so that you can get a sense of how they feel, even though they're in their inanimate states. You want to get a sense of how they feel about how Andy's talking about them, and the gaze of the beloved, as Michael Arndt always described it, of Andy looking down at them.
Hearing, everything that they had been hoping to hear for the last decade or so.
One of the big breakthroughs on this film was with the humans. If you look at the original Toy Story and even Toy Story 2, the human animation is not the strongest part of those films. Human animation, at least back then, was very, very difficult. With this story, especially this idea of having this final scene where Andy slowly gave away the toys and talked about how meaningful they were to him, it was just absolutely vital that the human animation be fantastic. We needed to see the souls inside of these characters. We needed to see every tiny little thought and twitch of the brow, and they needed to look fantastic. And so I laid down the gauntlet very early on, and I said, if we can't make these humans look great, if we can't design them to be really appealing, if we can't articulate them so that they can be animated well, and if we can't animate them to be just fantastic, then we shouldn't be telling the story. Because, again, the whole movie could have come undone at the end by distracting, awkward animation. So my team did a fantastic job. Just everyone kind of created these, I think, really great-looking human characters and laid a pipeline so that ultimately the animators could create these really subtle, nuanced performances. And that's what they are, the performances. I don't even think of it as animation. There's a lot going on in Andy's head throughout the scene, and we needed to communicate that all in very subtle ways. And I'm really, really happy with how it came out.
Those last moments between Bonnie and Andy, it's exquisite animation. I don't think I've seen any better. As you mentioned, the subtlety on the faces, the looks, the nuance of emotion that fleets across their faces. The word is exquisite, and we're very, very proud of that.
There was a lot of debate early on about how to end the movie. And I always felt very, very strongly that I wanted to see one last playtime with Andy, because it seems like the most ridiculous thing, of course, that Andy would ever play with these toys again. Yet at the same time, we made it clear that that's all they want more than anything in the world, is to be played with by Andy one last time.
That's what they were made to do.
And I just felt we had to give that to them. And again, Andy's in this safe place. He's in this environment where none of his friends are around, and he can just be a kid again and just see this sheer unbridled play, but also see how great Bonnie's play is, and that she's really the perfect new owner for the toys. They're in safe hands, they're in loving hands, they're in imaginative hands. And so we did this playtime, and we allowed the music to just play up over the top of everything, and the action almost gets lost in the swell of the music. I was very inspired by the end of Parenthood, which is another movie that Randy Newman actually scored. There's a whole sequence at the end of the film where we see the whole extended family together in the waiting room at a hospital, kind of welcoming a new baby into the world. And it's this kind of wordless moment. People are talking, but you don't really hear what they're saying, and the music just kind of carries the scene. And I've always found it extremely effective, and that was kind of my touchstone for that playtime at the end of the sequence.
The set design of Bonnie's house, it seems like a silly thing to mention, but from the inside of her bedroom to the outside of the house is just idyllic place. And it was important to all of us that we know that our toys were going to a warm, inviting, safe, fun, happy place.
David Eisenman and his team did just a beautiful job creating this house and all the greenery and the plants. And as Darla mentioned, we wanted it to be as lush and inviting and wonderful as possible, and they created just that. This last shot here on the porch where Woody says, "So long, partner," to Andy, it was animated by Rich Quaid, who's one of our senior animators. Rich has been with us since the first Toy Story and was one of the first people to animate Woody. And so I just thought it was fitting to give him the last shot in the movie, and he knocked it out of the park and just did a beautiful, understated job of it. And, of course, Tom Hanks is so wonderful in the whole film, and especially at this moment as Woody says goodbye. And the camera drifts up and away into the clouds, and we bookend the film because we open the movie. The very first shot are these kind of same clouds, so it has kind of a storybook quality to it. This end credit sequence sprang really out of the need to kind of wrap up some of the storylines that we weren't able to finish in the movie proper. When the toys all fall into the dumpster and leave Sunnyside, we leave Ken and Barbie kind of hanging. We never really see what happened back at Sunnyside. And that was really the biggest dangling storyline that we wanted to wrap up. So we came up with this idea of doing something kind of similar to what we did in Cars, where, rather than doing outtakes or a song or anything, that we would actually kind of extend the storytelling of the movie.
It's an epilogue, really.
Yeah, it's kind of an epilogue happening during the end credits, and it allowed us to kind of have all these beats where we see that Sunnyside's this good place now, and everyone's playing fairly. And
it's not just good; it's cool and groovy.
It is cool and groovy. Even though the toddlers are still going to be the toddlers, they're still going to play the way they play, but at least there's more equanimity in the place, and people are taking their turns. Allowed us to kind of wrap up the army men here and not leave them hanging, and see that they're okay and well taken care of. We added this beat just to sew up their story. I mean, it's a simple thing when they leave at the beginning of the movie, but it always felt a little unresolved, so we thought it would be fun to have them show up at Sunnyside and show that they're going to be part of this society there. And, we were able to have a little fun here and get Ken into one last groovy outfit. Actually, two, because he tears this off and reveals the gold tuxedo. I actually animated one character in the shot. It's the only animation I've ever done in my life. When Ken first shows up there's a kind of a giraffe bendy toy doing the twist in the background, and I animated that.
I see more animation in your future. And we love Big Baby and his diapers.
His golden diaper, and we got to kind of soften the monkey a little bit here. After my 5-year-old saw the movie, I asked him what his favorite thing was in the whole movie, and he said the monkey wearing the star glasses. So I guess I didn't need to make the whole rest of the movie. I could have just put the monkey in the star glasses, and he would have been happy. So once we decided to do that, we thought, well, we should really now touch base with Woody and the rest of the toys and kind of see how they're being integrated into the new family. And it also allowed us to show that the Sunnyside toys know that Woody and these guys are okay, because last they saw, they were in a garbage truck going to the dump. So I thought it was important to for everyone to be aware that everybody was okay and had made it through okay. This scene between Rex and Trixie I love. Trixie was, of course, designed to look like she had come from the same toy line as Rex. When I cast Tristan Shaw, I always knew she'd be great with Wally Shawn, but unfortunately in the movie, they never get to have a scene together, so we made sure they had a nice little moment together. All these drawings on the wall were done by my kids, my two daughters, Hannah and Alice. We thought it was kind of a cute way of showing how well integrated the toys were into kind of Bonnie's room. The peas in the pod came out of trying to think of the kinds of toys a little girl would have in her room. And we were just brainstorming. And somebody drew a drawing of the pea pod with these 3 little peas with faces inside. And I thought that was funny.
The peas are some of my favorite characters. They're just so adorable and childlike. And we just knew the kids would love that.
We love all of these new Bonnie toy characters. And it's just unfortunate that they don't get a lot of screen time in the movie. So this epilogue allowed us to kind of have a few more fun moments. So this last dance between Spanish Buzz, and Jesse sprang out of really just wanting to have one last little Spanish moment in the movie. And we were kicking around some ideas, and someone, I can't even remember who it was, came up with this idea of doing a kind of a last flamenco or Spanish dance, a paso doble. And then in that meeting, we thought, well, how about if we have You've Got a Friend in Me sung in Spanish? So we went out on the internet and we found the Spanish version of the song and listened to it. And we thought, well, that's kind of cool hearing the song in Spanish, but it just doesn't have the energy. It's not something you want to dance to. And then we just had the crazy idea of having the Gypsy Kings. And that was like the ultimate thing. We thought, oh my gosh, if we could get the Gypsy Kings to do this, it would just be perfect. And it was like a matter of weeks later that we found ourselves at Abbey Road Studios in London recording the song with the Gypsy Kings. The other thing is that we are not dancers, even remotely, at Pixar. I mean, maybe we like to dance, but we're not choreographers. So we ended up hiring Cheryl and Tony, 2 of the choreographers from Dancing with the Stars, And they came to Pixar one day and choreographed a whole Paso Doble for Buzz and Jessie to dance to. And we worked with them and the animators and kind of broke down all their moves and studied them and learned a lot about the Paso Doble, the dance, which is inspired by Spanish bullfighting, and created this whole dance. And then we kind of created our Buzz and Jessie version of what they had done, kept it kind of a little more toy-like, but just as passionate and just as over the top. I just wanted it to feel like, who knew? Jessie and Buzz know how to do the Paso Doble, and they're completely accomplished at it. Just seemed like a fun way to end the movie. This film is so emotional, especially at the very end of the film, and we didn't want to just roll the credits and leave everybody, feeling bittersweet and emotional. We wanted people to have some time to kind of gather themselves and have a laugh again, kind of get re-energized before they finally left the theater. And I think the Spanish, You've Got a Friend in Me, as performed by the Gypsy Kings and as danced by Buzz and Jessie, it was just the perfect way to end the film. So as all these names roll by here, hopefully you're getting a little sense of just how many hundreds and hundreds of people it takes to make a movie like this. It took us over 4 years to make Toy Story 3.
4 years, 1 month.
4 years and 1 month. And it's just an enormous amount of work by a lot of very talented and very passionate people. And it all adds up into hopefully a film that you have really enjoyed and will want to watch again and again. I think the thing that's most frustrating about doing these audio commentaries is that we only have like an hour and a half to tell 4 years worth of stories. I mean, I think we could do, 100 of these discs and fill them up with just all the crazy stuff that happened and all the inspiration for what became Toy Story 3. And the other frustrating thing is that, there were so many hundreds of talented people working with us making this movie. I wish I could thank them all personally, because each individual brought some of themselves to this movie. And hopefully when they watch the finished film, they're proud of the work that they did. So I guess we can thank them in some small way by the fact that we're forcing you to stay in your chair right now and watch all their names go by. Each one of these people that you're seeing here played a big role in making Toy Story 3 what it is.
True that. These movies are so collaborative. And some of the unsung heroes are the managers and coordinators and PAs. They are really some of the glue that holds it together. And so, kids, this is for you. And some of our favorite part of these credits, which are a long time, I think since Toy Story, we like to give credits to the babies that were born during the making of the film from the whole company.
It's just a little, again, indication of how much time it takes to make one of these films, that so many babies were born over the course of it. And all of us who've had kids, we can name the movies that our kids were born during. My kids often like to pop in the DVDs and find their names in the production baby credits.
And then we quickly put them to work. Also, it's important to keep the staff growing.
Anyway, signing off, this is Lee Unkrich, the director of the film.
And Darla Anderson, the producer of the film.
And we hope you enjoyed Toy Story 3 as much as we enjoyed making it.
The end.